It's Brian Preston, the money guy.
Let's talk about something I know a little bit about, Bo. 40s.
Okay, love it.
Here's the thing, guys. I think that there's a lot of us that feel like we're imposters because we, in our 20s and 30s, we're part of that. 20s were broke, 30s is the messy middle. I just felt like when I was in these periods, yes, I was prioritized saving, but I was all putting it into retirement accounts. And it was one of those things you get in your 40s and you're like, when does it actually start to feel easy? When do I get that margin to actually enjoy life? If you are getting close to your 40s, that's likely where it happened. Look, the reason I'm confessing this and sharing this is that I know there's going to be other financial mutants in your 20s and 30s, and you're like, does it get easier? I feel like there's a lot of sacrifice going on here, and I want to know, where does life start feeling better? It's just, I feel like Papa Smurf. It's just right over the hill, because I'm telling you, this is the decade where if you've done it right in your 20s and 30s, your 40-something self will be like, job well done. Now we can start pulling off of the accelerator, because maybe we did it right early enough. We can start thinking bigger about what we can do long term.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about the specific tax buckets in your 40s. Well, when you think about your first bucket, your tax deferred bucket, I think this one is really exciting in your 40s because, according to Ramsey Solutions, most millionaires, when they reach millionaire status, it happens in large part due to their 401k, due to the tax deferred bucket that they've been funding at their job.
Have you ever thought about why that is? I think about this all the time from a behavioral standpoint. I think, and this is something you ought to reflect on. I'm going a little off script here on the way you think about everything. It's because it's automatic. I mean, I love how retirement plans force us. You get paid either twice a month or once a month, and they take a percentage of what you get paid and throw it in the markets. It doesn't matter if the market's getting beaten up. It doesn't matter what's going on geopolitically or so forth. You are systematically buying every month. And once you know it, because you're also getting that free money from your employer through the match or contributions from profit sharing, this is the way most millionaires reach that status. I want you to take that and leverage it to the other buckets of your life as well. But this is why tax deferred is the biggest bucket.
Well, and there's actually been studies and analytics and analysis to exactly back that up. Again, according to Ramsey Solution, their national study, they found that when they interviewed, I want to say it was like 10,000 millionaires or something like that, 80% of millionaires said they invested in their company's 401k. That was part of their wealth building journey. And they actually reached millionaire status at age 49. So it is very much in this decade that folks went into that like higher level wealth building. They turned into millionaires.
And then make sure you're maxing it out. I mean, this is the chance where if you've never reached 20,500 or whatever the current year limit is, make that a goal.
Yep,
I mean, push
absolutely.
through that so you can break through that barrier and take it even to more savings. And then, Bo, this is where we can transition also into tax-free. Now, look, I'll be honest. It is easy. The hardest part of doing tax-free investing in your 20s and 30s is having the discipline of living below your means, that you have the resources to do it. The problem in your 40s likely is because your income threshold is getting where the government is restricting your access to these type of investments.
Yeah, there's a good chance by the time you're in this decade, you've been building assets, hopefully if you're a financial mutant, for the last 20 years. So your tax-free strategy is likely already in place. If you are contributing to a Roth IRA, you've probably continued to contribute to a Roth IRA. If you are putting money into the Roth 401k portion of your 401k, you've probably continued doing that. Well, in your 40s, as you think about being a field general that wants to command your army of dollar bills in the most effective way possible, you ought to annually reassess, am I putting my dollars in the right place? Because you said, Brian, early on in the 20s, it's about having the discipline to contribute to Roth and to tax-free assets. In your 40s, it's about having the knowledge and the intellect to decide, is that actually the best place for me to put my dollars, or might I be served putting them somewhere else, like in a tax-free type bucket?
So let's actually give them some data, though, because this is the thing. I think a lot of people, they're like, I hear you. I'm a financial mutant. I need some numbers or data with this. We want to talk about, and let's just give you the nerd language here.
Sure.
marginal tax rate. That's what the next dollar the federal government taxes you at, or your state marginal rate, which is the next dollar that you earn, what is the state going to tax you at? If you will add the percentages up, so the federal government might be 24%. Your state government might be 6%. If you looked at that, that means the next dollar you make is going to be taxed at 30%. That's your marginal rate is 30%. So we have a pretty easy system here. Now, look, you might need to customize this. I want to put a disclaimer is that this is very general information here. But just thinking about where we think taxes are going, tax rates likely will have to go up in the long term because of all the commitments that the government has created. So we think anybody who's in a tax bracket, a marginal combined tax bracket of 25% or less, man, Roth is your friend because you're definitely paying some historic low rates. 25 to 30%. That's kind of gray zone because there's a chance when you retire in the future, your income will go down because you have less earned income coming in. So maybe your tax rates will actually go down in the future. But we think 25 to 30% it's nuanced. It's kind of nuanced. You need to know a lot more about what's going on in your financial life to figure out should you be tax-free Roth contributor or should you be pre-tax and taking the current year deduction. Over 30%, we think, hey, now you're getting into every dollar you put in. If you put any dollar into your retirement, the government's essentially funding a third of that contribution. That's pretty powerful. You're probably looking for ways to minimize your annual tax bill. We think that makes sense to go more traditional with those retirement plans over the 30% marginal rates. All
right, so in our 40s, we've talked about the tax deferred. We're likely maxing out our 401ks or retirement plans for the first time. We're assessing annually our tax-free bucket, figuring out where our dollar should be going. We already mentioned that in our 30s, that might be when we start to actually be able to dump some money into that after-tax account. Well, in your 40s, you better start getting really serious about what your needs are for your specific situation. If you're someone who's maybe part of the FIRE movement, or you're thinking about you want to leave the workforce early, this very well be the most important bucket that you build over the next 15 to 20 years.
It's not uncommon for me to see prospects or financial mutants come through the doors or reach out to us, and they're doing well. They might even have 7 figures of investment assets. Sure. But you know how many of them are in after tax to buy that next new car with cash versus debt, or to start funding the kids' college? It's actually, there's a lot of you in your 40s, you're going to recognize you are retirement account rich, but not very liquid cash. You know, you don't have a lot of abundance there. So that's why we tell people, pay attention in your 40s that you should be paying attention to. Do you have enough money to buy that car with cash? Do you have enough that you can start contributing to the kids' college accounts? It's going to get very important to start thinking forward on the 3 buckets. That's why Bo even mentioned FIRE movement people, or anybody who thinks they're going to retire I would say even if you go, I say pre-60, so 55, even beyond, before that, you better start building that bridge account ASAP because you're going to need some liquidity in that after-tax account.
Now, I don't want you to hear us wrong. If you're someone who's sitting with $1 million in your 401k, we didn't just tell you that you're in a bad financial circumstance. Remember, everything we talk about is about optimization and maximization. We want you to be able to control your financial circumstance as much as you can. Building a bucket strategy to custom fit your unique needs is just a part of that maximization and optimization. So if you are thinking about those sorts of things early enough in your 40s, you can begin to make accumulation decisions that will make that transition into retirement much more seamless and much more smooth.
Well, and people, it comes down to the nuts and bolts of what does it cost to get a dollar.
That's
too.
right.
Because I mean, if you are somebody who's thinking you're going to retire, say at 50, 55, you're going to find out that those tax deferred dollars are extremely expensive to get access to. Even if you can get past the penalties and everything else, you're still going to pay ordinary income taxes on them. You want to be careful with that. And then you don't want to be pulling out of your tax-free pot because that's going to be your maximization money that's growing tax-free. Start working on that after-tax account while you're in your 40s and income is really good.
All right, Brian. So we've talked about the 20s, the 30s, the 40s. I'm going to call those sort of practice, or maybe the preamble, or some other sort of name for that. Because once you get into the 50s and beyond, This is sort of game time. This is sort of where it matters, the decisions you've been making from an accumulation standpoint. This is where you actually get to see the fruit of your labor for the last 30 years in terms of building up your tax buckets.
Well, this is, you think about it. Most of us come out and start living life as an adult in your 20s.
Yep.
That's probably thank you, Captain Obvious. But it is one of those things, if you look at the math of it, you've been doing this for 30 years, you better start taking some metrics of how well am I doing things. And I will tell you, to toot the horn of our net worth tool, I have several friends that have bought this and they've given me feedback on it. They go, man, I need to be paying better attention to my 3 buckets because I'm in trouble.
Yep.
I'm thinking I'm going to retire here, but where's my money going to come from? Because this is definitely something where you better be measuring twice to make sure you get it right. And it's better to see that metric when you're still years from needing it versus having to scramble right in the last minute and get this right.
Yeah, that's the reason we put it on our net worth dashboard. We think that it's that important. We don't just want you to see your tax buckets when you're 57 years old. We want you to see it when you're 27 years old and when you're 35 years old and when you're 40 years old so that you can be thinking about, okay, what's the reason I'm making these decisions and what's the goal I'm ultimately moving towards? Because when you get into your 50s or when you get into beyond your 50s into financial independence, it's going to matter those decisions that you've made up to this point.
And I think it goes further. I mean, most of my viewers, we're all financial mutants. We're cut from the same cloth in a lot of ways to where when you pay somebody, they have to pull a little harder, especially the bigger the bill, the harder that money is to come out of your hands. A lot of you get to your 50s and you're like, man, I've been pretty successful just on my own, do it yourself. I'm telling you, you don't know what you don't know. And this is one of those things, we'll give you the tools through like the net worth tool, go to learn.moneyguy.com. But this is also the graduation point where some of you have enough resources. Those blind spots of what you don't know might require that you need a financial advisor or a co-pilot. You're the CEO of this enterprise, but how about bringing in a CFO that can look at this in a more nuanced way and think about those variables that you've done this for the first time. You're on your maiden journey of this. It'd be nice to bring somebody who maybe has a few more reps at this so you can make sure you're doing it right.